Orbic Enigma 4, the Elden Tree. Inscribed by Beridalmo the Signifier. Here is a truth read from the bark. The spike of Adamantia, and its zero stone, dictated the structure of reality in its orbic vicinity, defining for the earthbones their story or nature within the unfolding of the dragon's time-bound tale. The Aldmeri or Merethic elves were singular of purpose only so long as it took them to realize that other towers, with their own stones, could tell different stories, each following rules inscribed by Variorum architects. And so the Mare self-refracted, each to their own creation, the Chimera following red heart, the Bosma burgeoning green sap, the Altma erecting crystal-like lore, Alia. But of all the prismatic Mare, none were more presumptuous than the Aileeds of the Heartland. They built their tower in open emulation of Adamantia, using as founding stone the great red diamond they had uncovered, Chim el Adabal, said to be crystallized blood from the heart of Lorcan itself. For the heart on its arrow passed over the heartlands, birthing one of that postnimic's quaternary meanings. Thus did white gold become Tower 1. As all know, as foretold by the moth-eyed, Aelid hubris was to bear bitter fruit. With their vision on high to behold the overworlds, they failed to note the seething Netherlings at their feet, until the thralls rose up and took their tower away from them. Chim el Adabal they took as well, but not before the archmage Anumaral fangled an eightfold staff of towers, each segment a semblance of a tower in its dance. And then 7 of these segments were borne by white gold knights to distant fold places, where they were hidden. This was all unknown to Pelin al-Essia, be certain, or there might have been a different 8 divines. Thus white gold. On to green sap. The Boicher elves were of the earthbones who most hearkened to Jeffra and his green songs. They did not build a tower, they grew it, a great Graht oak whose roots sprang from a perchance acorn. And this was their stone. And because the acorn might perchance have been elsewhere, thus was green sap manifold and several. And each could walk, therefore each green sap was also every green sap. Within each were told all the stories of the green, with every ending true, so doors therein were not always doors certain. But to this the Boicher become Bosma became inured, and indeed grew to relish these doors equivocal, for such was their nature in the schism of the prism. In this way the Bosma learned which songs made the trees dance, and which dances they might do. Now return we must to the 8th segment, or rather segment 1, for Anumaral had fangled it in similitude to Tower 1, which itself reflected Tower 0. When the Aileeds fled the heartlands they went to all 8 corners of the compass, and this was a chosen thing, though many corners spelled doom. But more Aileeds fled to Valenwood than to all other directions combined, and this, too, was chosen. Among these clans went Anumaral wearing segment 1 as a femur, for how but by walking can a spoke advance its hub. Green sap's elves welcomed the Aileeds so long as the Heartlanders agreed not to dissonate the green song. All agreed to this save Anumaral, who coughed into his hand unnoticed. He asked the great Cameron to show him green sap, and was brought to one that by happenstance stood then in Elden Root. Once within the great Graht he passed through a door equivocal and found his desire, the perchance acorn. It was one of many, but for Anumaral one was enough. Next the fanglement, Anumaral brought forth segment 1 among the roots and showed it to the golden nut, and this told an ending, so that the stone became a definite acorn. That Elden Tree would not walk again, but Anumaral yet had further intentions for it. Using his dentition as tonal instruments, he dismantled his bones and built of them a mundus machine that mirrored Nirn and its planets. And when he had used all his substance in fangling this orrery, he placed the segment scepter within, hiding it between the moons. Then he waited, but what he waited for did not eventuate, and perchance he's waiting yet. For Anumaral had hoped to convert green sap into white gold, and thereby make the Heartlanders' realm anew. However, Anumaral did not know, and was not able to know, why his plan went awry. You see, Aelid magic is about will, and shall, and must, but under green sap, all is perchance. The Aelid Fangler's plan could not succeed, and yet neither could it fail. For this is a story that has not yet found its ending. Aelid's Survivals in Valenwood. By Quinor of Cloudrest, 4th tier scholar of Tamrielic Minutiae. This report was commissioned by the Thalmor Committee of Alliance Relations to investigate whether there might be an indoctrinal advantage to emphasizing the Aelid lineage woven into the bloodlines of our cousins the Wood Elves. My extensive travels in Valenwood have enabled me to determine the historical facts behind the matter. Whether these facts can support a useful campaign promoting Alliance fellowship is up to the committee and the Sapiarch of Indoctrination, as Pluribel of Dusk has noted in her magisterial. Collapse of the Aelids, blame for the white gold catastrophe of 1E243 can be attributed to a half-dozen disastrous factors, of which the bloody insurrection by indentured human laborers may not be the most important. Pluribel emphasizes, quite rightly in my belief, the Narfinsul schism of the late Merethic era, which pitted the more conservative Aedra-worshipping Aelid clans against those decadent yet undeniably vigorous clans that had adopted Daedra worship. This conflict reached its climax in 1E198 at the Scouring of Wendelbeck, when King Glinferin of Atata led a combined force of Daedraphile warriors against the traditionalist Barsebics of Aelidun. The Barsebics were driven out of the Heartland into northwest Argonia, and thereafter organized opposition to Daedra worship in Cyrodiil was effectively over. In any event, by most measures Aelid civilization had been in decline for several generations by the time the White Gold Tower fell to the savagery of the Needs. Standing amid the ruins of a great elven culture, the victors concocted a justification for the blood on their hands by painting the defeated clans as vicious Daedrophiles who reveled in torture and cruelty. An exception was made for those clans, mainly Aedric adherents, who had thrown in their lot with the hordes of the Slave Queen. Of course, this only delayed their extermination, for the barbarous Needs inevitably came after their former allies once the other elves of Cyrodiil had been hunted to extinction. Thus began the Aelid diaspora, in which the Heartland elves sought to find new homes elsewhere in Tamriel, to decidedly mixed success. Those who fled north into the lands once held by the farmer were slaughtered by Nords led by the infamous Vraj the Butcher. The Barsebics, by that time well established in Argonia, refused admittance to their former persecutors the Atatarics, and most of that clan died on an ill-fated expedition into the lands of the Cat Men. Several clans set out on the long march through Hammerfell to the Iliac Bay, and some actually made it, where they joined with, and were absorbed by, the long-established Dyreni of Balfiera. Most successful, and they were more than a few, were the clans that fled southwest beneath the canopy of Valenwood. The clans of Anatwil, Vilverin, Talwing, Bourne, and Verondo all escaped largely intact to carve out a new life under the trees. These clans all worshipped Daedric princes, but they seem to have done so with less fervor after their enforced migration to Valenwood, possibly due to the fact that the princes, when called upon, had offered little or no help to the Forsaken clans. Fortunately their new hosts, the Bosma, were remarkably generous in welcoming the Aelids into their realm, so long as the Heartland elves agreed to adopt aspects of the Green Pact and refrain from harming the forest. Having little choice, the Aelids agreed, and this probably contributed to the dilution of their culture, for diluted it was, absorbed over time, and eventually forgotten. I have walked the great Aelid ruins of Valenwood, Hectorheim, Rulinjil's Fall, Bellerata, Leiloria, and a dozen more, and none of them, not one, was still occupied only 2,000 years after the diaspora. For some reason, Once the Aleeds were under the great Grahtwood, they, and their distinctive culture, simply melted away. In explaining the extinction of the Valenwood Aleeds, my predecessor Gelgarad the Velaspid was very attached to his theorem of disheritage, which held that for some reason the forest Aleeds became unable to breed with each other and could only generate offspring by mating with the local Bosma. This would certainly account for the Aleeds' gradual disappearance, but unfortunately Gelgarad's theorem is supported only by old stories and legends, and absent facts it cannot be proven. It is worth mentioning here the competing theory of Dr. Thetis of the Shimmerine Academy. Her explanation blames Aleed decline on overconsumption of the unusually potent beverages of the Bosma. Dr. Thetis believes the Aleeds, vulnerable in grief over their losses, fell prey to the wood elves' paralyzing brews and simply gave up trying. In this they may have been encouraged by the Bosma themselves, who often seem insulted by others' displays of industrious effort. And what did our forest-dwelling cousins learn from the Aleeds? Precious little, apparently, other than some advanced techniques of stonework and masonry. Heartland elven culture seems to have made little lasting impression on the culture of the wood elves. Their attitude seems to me summed up by the statement of Fonlaw, the Eurothane of Elden Root, whose response when I asked him about the Aleeds was as follows: "The Aleeds? Oh, yes. Nice fellows. Took themselves too seriously, though, and what did it get them?" Common Arms of Valenwood. By Mistral Aurelian Tariscor metal weapons have never been widespread in Valenwood. The Wood Elves' Green Pact prescribes the use of wood to kindle forge fires, though in some areas the burning of peat or coal can get kilns up to metal forging temperatures. Other Bosma make do with bone clubs, or use axes and spears with blades of stone or obsidian. In the coastal towns such as Haven and Port Velen, Bosmeri swordsmanship has benefited from the tutelage of Altmer advisors and a reliable supply of imported metal weapons. Strangely, the High Elves are not similarly appreciative of the Bosmeri composite horn bows, which are arguably the finest in Tamriel. While some have described the Dominion as an alliance of mutual convenience, I would characterize it as one of mutual exasperation. Swordsmanship is a case in point. Few Wood Elves have the mental discipline for traditional Altmeri martial schooling. They are easily distracted, and have no patience for the philosophical aspects of the training. Altmeri masters, who describe their system of swordsmanship as proper conflict, refused to adapt their techniques to the smaller stature and shorter reach of their pupils. So the Bosma returned to their traditional method of warfare, archery. By the age of 14, a Wood ELF youth is proficient enough with the bow to accompany hunting parties. Long-distance archers are called jackspurs. The style of draw used by jackspurs has been described as snatching and releasing in one continuous motion. This allows a jackspur to maintain a very high rate of shooting. Though years of training are required to be accurate at such speed, the Bosma are perfectly willing to purchase and use wooden bows and arrows crafted by other races, but the Green Pact prevents them from making any of their own. Traditional Bosma bows are crafted from horn and sinew. Strings are also made of sinew. Khajiit gut is said to work best, and is thus prized among Valenwood archers. Bosmeri arrows are carved from bone, and fletched with the feathers of various bird species. The Wood Elves believe the source of bone used influences the characteristics of the arrow. Mammoth bone arrows are thought to strike with enough force to knock down a target. Bird bone arrows fly faster and more accurately. Sench tiger bone arrows deal extra damage. Trials by Imperial observers have been unable to replicate these alleged effects. Upon hearing this, the Bosma merely cluck their tongues and smile. In the company of wood orcs. From the Personal Journal of Caesarion. Orcs are strange. They are unsubtle, brutish, and straightforward in just about every way. Certainly there is variation in personality between individuals, but there are some things a Bosma can always expect from an orc, none of which our culture can fully comprehend. Their wood orc cousins are strangers still, but for different reasons. They ironically share more commonalities with the Bosma, and are found mostly within Valenwood, though wood orcs prize strength and honor, and above all else, their interpretation of what those things mean separates them from their northern, Orsinium cousins. For instance, having strength to a wood orc means having agility and mobility as much as it does muscular power and endurance. I would like to hear an Orsinium orc's take on the topic, but I imagine that, if one considers an Orsinium orc as formed like a member of a heavy infantry regiment, then a wood orc is like a light skirmisher in the same army. The wood orcs, like the Bosma, also flourish in forested areas. They've made no pact with the green. By my bow, they have utter disregard for and a lack of knowledge of the green pact, but I wouldn't be surprised if they stood in Wyfrey's favor in some way, with the ease I've seen him navigate tree-laden regions. Why worry about this? I've had wood orcs on the mind lately. It's difficult not to when one has been among them, as I have. I was ordered through their territory by a local battle reeve to deliver a message, was told it would be easy to avoid detection. But wood orcs are a very different breed of orc, as I've detailed above. When they caught me, no one save a Bosma ever catches me. They noticed my presence in the trees above, though I suspect they must have been wary of something in their forest for days. I was ready, though, and felled two of the trio who turned on me with the same arrow. I was taken aback. I had expected to fell 3. But the last one, inexplicably, and in a most un-orcish fashion, bolted out of the way, like lightning. I leapt, rolled to the ground, just as a curved hand axe whirled into the trees, through the space where my heart would have been. I came to my feet with dagger ready, and parried a blow from a second hand axe that nearly shook the knife from my hand. The wood orc growled and swung again, and in that moment, I couldn't have told him from his Orsinium cousins. He fought with the agility and grace of my people, mixed with the honor-bound fury of the northern orcs. He managed to tear a deep wound in my side, as I tossed a handful of dirt into his eyes. Half blinded by pain myself, I stumbled to relative safety in the darkness of the woods as he cursed and spat, called me a coward who disguised himself with the forest instead of fighting with it. Hersign must have walked with me that day, for I was sure that battle was lost. The wood orc fought too fiercely, knew his own forest too well. But he never did manage to find me again. I would welcome a second contest, but in Bosma territory. The Book of the Great Tree. All things to the tree from the tree, all things. Aelid prophecy. Let this be your first lesson. The roots of the first tree grasp all the ground on which you stand. When the rains and wind come, it will be the roots that hold you firm. Under the roots lies Nirn, and over her boughs shines Aetherius. She provides both floor and roof. You need no other shelter. Azra root grows along the banks of the slow-moving rivers. Pull it gently free of the mud and wrap the roots in a damp cloth. Thus the plant may be transported. These will take root in pots and baskets of moss, if they are kept moist enough. When the Salach elves first came to the Elden Root, they were led to it by Meridia's shining colors, which told them this was a gift and blessing. The tree's branches and roots are as hands, reaching at once into the Mundus and overworld. On this, we built Mundus' greatest city and prove ourselves her highest and most honored race. In the heat of the summer, shroud the leaves of the alocasia in silk. The fruit will grow larger and sweeter if the growing process is thus slowed. It is said Wyfra took its fallen fruit as tribute. The Alomeria plant is related to this, but will not bear fruit. You may know it as water hyacinth. ********. When they arrived, they said, "This is the grove of the one great tree. This is the grove of the sages, the Elden Grove. We brought with us life and knowledge, and in the shade of the great tree, we built the classrooms and libraries, so that we would make a harvest of our legacy of intellect." *******. The seed of the nirnroot may be carried great distances by birds and other creatures. Near the great tree, the fronds grow tall and lush. Farther away, they may grow reedier and less hardy. Let this likewise be a lesson. The Devouring of Gil Vardel. By Faster. Everyone knows what happened to Gil Vardel. And at the same time, no one does. Legend has it that Malag Bal, the dreaded Daedric prince, set foot into that wood ELF township, consumed it, according to the myth, whatever that actually means. Ancient tales employ metaphors like armies employ soldiers. If Bal himself visited this plane with evil intent, why do any of us remain? The stories about him would lead one to believe he would not have stopped with the razing of a single wood ELF town. He wouldn't have stopped until all of Tamriel was in flames. Just one common question of many regarding the Daedric prince's so-called visit. Some retort that perhaps someone stopped him, possibly an opposing Daedric prince, a divine, or an agent of the Aedra. But again, where is the evidence for this? No mage or historian, that I've spoken to, at least, has been able to reference a specific text for this information. Many a historical fiction piece has attempted to dramatize what occurred there, but none of those stories can be confirmed, except to say that a catastrophic event struck the town. Perhaps the residents were killed, perhaps they fled. None were ever heard from again, but for all anyone knows, a large fire could have been the culprit. I can't imagine anything more catastrophic than that to a wood ELF dwelling. Today, Gil Vardel is a maligned place, and there are not many who dare to venture near. But not because of any tangible foes, save cowardice and superstition. The Legend of Vasteri. By Afwa, a student and friend. Necromancy is known to many as a binding of souls to a form prepared, or in some cases, manufactured, by the conjurer, while technically accurate. The implication is that souls bound in this manner are imprisoned against their will with no hope of release. Further implied is the idea that souls occupying the construct are always sentient, the souls of men or mare, a fallacy perpetuated by the practice of animating corpses for martial or manual labors. It is this misunderstanding and the potential for abuse that led to the vilification of necromancy and the expulsion of Mannimarco and his peers from the Isle of Artium. Enter Vasteri. A student of the Sigic order and contemporary of such notables as Vanus Galerian and Mannimarco, while Mannimarco sought power through the direct application of necromantic energies, Vasteri's purposes were far more esoteric. She sought a way to delay the release of a sentient soul upon death that it might be consulted, its knowledge recorded for the ages. It is to this end that she worked with Mannimarco after leaving Artium. Searching for a way to trap souls as one might capture lesser Daedra. Believing the secret lay with Malag Bal, the two conspired to enter Cold Harbor and wrest it from the father of vampires himself. Together, they hatched a plan. With a brash courage known only to the young, Mannimarco and his followers held open a portal to the prince's realm. Ever thirsting for adventure, it was Vasteri who entered its depths and returned with a cache of black crystals the likes of which they had never seen. To Mannimarco, they were perfect. Small, capable of containing even the most willful of souls, and apparently indestructible. To Vasteri, they were deeply flawed, for enchantment was the only safe way to free a soul from their depths. Even so, she set about the task of reproducing the stones, breaking them down, testing them with a variety of substances until, by happy accident, she created something new. the first sigil geode. Clear as crystal, this new device was capable of holding sentient souls within its depths, but unlike the gems wrested from the Lord of Domination, it was exceptionally fragile and would only hold its charge for a matter of days, once imprisoned. Souls could be transferred between geodes, but applying them as one would a soul gem affected a soul's release. Instead, Vasteri had found what she was looking for, but Manamako was furious. What use was a soul gem that could not be used to fuel an enchantment? He demanded Vasteri find a way to modify her creation to his purposes. Realizing her friend would never stop searching, and that further discoveries made with him would only advance his goals, she gathered up her research and left with Telaka, her husband and a powerful necromancer in his own right. Together, they fled Manamako's grasp, eventually hiding in an Aelid ruin deep within Valenwood. There, they lived for many years, as quietly as they could while perfecting their art. For decades, they had each other and seemed happy, until the day Vasteri left. In the years that followed, she wandered the surface of Nirn, exploring places of power. She visited Wayrest, Alika, the Crystal Tower, and the libraries of June, searching for some answer to a question that gnawed at her very soul. In time, she found what she was looking for and returned to Valenwood. There, she built a tower and took on apprentices, teaching them her particular brand of necromancy and furthering her research. Using her sigil geodes, we bound the souls of Lesser Dedra, postponing their return to oblivion as one might with a soul gem. We then worked on a way to manifest the trapped spirit into the world. Early attempts had unexpected, even dangerous results. Geodes shattered, sending shards of broken crystal into the flesh of four fellow students. Misapplied energies bound the souls of the living into the tiny stones, but as we studied we corrected our mistakes and refined the process. Eventually, Vasteri had it down to a science. By applying a sigil geode at the moment of death, a soul could be suspended within its depths. Through applied conjuration, it could be drawn into an ectoplasmic shell where it could be consulted at leisure. She wrote the Foundling Mages Guild of her discovery. Vanus Galerian himself came to witness her demonstration, which involved consulting an old groundskeeper who had volunteered to demonstrate the process. He was horrified when she bound the soul into her apparatus, and when the process was completed. With the old groundskeeper was released and allowed to return to Aetherius, he was white as a sheet. Slowly, he stood to address the assembled students. He spoke with vindictiveness and an anger none would expect from his unassuming mien. When he was finished, he turned and left. Some followed him. None could blame them. He wasn't wrong. The sigil geode was a dangerous creation. Misused, it could spark wars and bring about destruction unheard of in our history. Vasteri was undeterred, convinced that Galerian's willful ignorance would lead to his undoing, but something else would gain her attention in the years to come. A vast ruin was discovered beneath her tower's foundation, concealed from sight unless crying by the power of a Daedric prince. In time, she walked into those ruins and never came out. Some of us still await her return. Varieties of Faith. The Khajiit. By Brother Mikkel Karkuksor of the Imperial College as fits their heterodoxy of form, the Khajiit worship many gods, and few confine themselves to the Imperial Eight. The Eight, Alkosh, Dragon King of Cats, pre-Redata dynasty and a canine deity. A variation on the Altmeri Auri El, and thus an Akatosh as culture hero for the earliest Khajiit. His worship was co-opted during the establishment of the Riddlever, and he still enjoys immense popularity in Elswey's wasteland regions. He is depicted as a fearsome dragon, a creature the Khajiits say, is just a real big cat. He repelled an early Aldmeri pogrom of Pelinal Whitestrake during mythic times. Riddlever, Two Moons Dance, the cosmic order deity of the Khajiit. The Riddlever was revealed to Elsewhere by the prophet Rid Thar Redata, the main. The Riddler is more a set of guidelines by which to live than a single entity, but some of his avatars like to appear as humble messengers of the gods. Also known as the Sugar God, Joan and Jode, Little Moon God and Big Moon God, together, the moons represent duality, fate, and luck. In Khajiit religion, Joan and Jode are aspects of the lunar lattice, or Ya-Khaje, Mara, Mother Cat, nearly universal goddess. Originally a fertility goddess, the Khajiit associate her with Nia of the Anuad, the female principle of the cosmos. She is the lover of Alkosh. Srondar, the Runt, god of mercy. Srondar's sphere includes compassion, charity, and justice. In early Aldmeri legends, Srondar is the apologist of men. Kenathi, god of winds. Kenathi is the strongest of the sky spirits. In some legends, he is the first to agree to Lorcage's plan to invent the mortal plane, and provides the space for its creation in the void. He is also associated with rain, a phenomenon said not to occur before the removal of Lorcage's divine spark. Bandar, the bandit god. In most regions, Bandar is a marginal deity, a trickster spirit of thieves and beggars. In Elsewhere he is more important, and is regarded as the pariah. In this aspect, Bandar becomes the cleverness or desperate genius of the long-suffering Khajiit, whose last-minute plans always upset the machinations of their elven or human enemies. He has also lent his name to the Bandari peddlers, the traveling Khajiiti merchant tribe. Additional deities with significant Khajiiti cults: Magrus, Katsai, sun god, Khajiiti version of Magnus, the god of the sun and sorcery. Popular with Khajiiti magicians, though less so than Azura, Rajin, the footpad, thief and trickster god, the purring liar, much beloved of Khajiiti storytellers. Rajin grew up in the Black Kirgo section of Senchal. The most famous burglar in Elseway's history, Rajin is said to have stolen a tattoo from the neck of Empress Kintira as she slept. Azura, goddess of dusk and dawn, patron of Khajiiti magicians, respected rather than feared for her sometime trickery. In myth she is tied into the origins of Khajiiti out of Aldmeri stock. Shegarath, Skumakat, the mad god, the king of insanity, appeals to the darker side of the catmen, who chafe at the strictures of sanity and responsibility. Hircine, hungry cat, god of hunting and skin-changing. Revered for his fierceness and cunning. Sangjin, blood cat, god of death and secret murder. Sanjine's worship is hidden from Cat's eye. For who can control the urges of blood? Namira, the great darkness, an enemy of the living, to be placated rather than worshipped. Lorcage, moon beast, pre-Redata dynasty Anakinine deity, easily identified with the missing god, Lorcan. This creator trickster tester deity is in every Tamrielic mythic tradition. He convinced or contrived the original spirits to bring about the creation of the mortal plane, upsetting the status quo, much like his father Padome had introduced instability into the universe in the beginning place. After the world is materialized, Lorcage is separated from his divine center, sometimes involuntarily, and wanders the creation of the Ayada. He and his metaphysical placement in the scheme of things is interpreted a variety of ways. In the legends, he is almost always an enemy of the Aldmer and, therefore, a hero of early mankind. Varieties of Faith. The Wood Elves. By Brother Mikkel Karkuksor of the Imperial College the Eight, though few Bosma outside the Empire accept the limitation of divines to 8, Auri El, king of the Aldmer, the elven Akatosh is Auri El. Auri El is the soul of Anui El, who, in turn, is the soul of Anu the Everything. He is the chief of most Aldmeri pantheons. Most Altmeri and Bosmeri claim direct descent from Auri El. In his only known moment of weakness, he agreed to take his part in the creation of the mortal plane, that act which forever sundered the elves from the spirit worlds of eternity. To make up for it, Auriel led the original Aldmer against the armies of Lorcan in mythic times, vanquishing that tyrant and establishing the first kingdoms of the Aldmer, Aldmeris and Old Elnofe. He then ascended to heaven in full observance of his followers, so that they might learn the steps needed to escape the mortal plane. Wyfra, god of the forest, most important deity of the Bosmeri pantheon. While Auriel the time dragon might be the king of the gods, the Bosmer revere Wyfra as the spirit of the now. According to the Wood Elves, after the creation of the mortal plane everything was in chaos. The first mortals were turning into plants and animals and back again. Then Wyfra transformed himself into the first of the Elnofe, or earth bones. After these laws of nature were established, mortals had a semblance of safety in the new world, because they could finally understand it. Wyfra is sometimes called the storyteller, for the lessons he taught the first Bosmer. Some Bosmer still possess the knowledge of the chaos times, which they can use to great effect. The Wild Hunt, Arche, god of the cycle of life and death. Arche is the god of burials and funeral rites, and is sometimes associated with the seasons. His priests are staunch opponents of necromancy and all forms of the undead. It is said that Arche did not exist before the world was created by the gods under Lorcan's supervision, urging trickery. Therefore, he is sometimes called the mortal's god. Exarxes. Exarxes is the god of ancestry and secret knowledge. He began as a scribe to Auriel, and has kept track of all Aldmeri accomplishments, large and small, since the beginning of time. He created his wife, Okma, from his favorite moments in history, Mara, goddess of love, nearly universal goddess. Origins started in mythic times as a fertility goddess. She is sometimes associated with Nia of the Anuad, the female principle of the cosmos that gave birth to creation. For the Bosmer, she is the wife of Auriel, Stendar, god of mercy, god of compassion and righteous rule. In early Aldmeri legends, Stendar is the apologist of men, Zen, god of toil, Bosmeri god of payment in kind, which includes both just remuneration and retribution. Studies indicate origins in both Argonian and Akaviri mythologies, perhaps introduced into Valenwood by Cothran G. Sailors. Ostensibly an agriculture deity, Zen sometimes proves to be an entity of a much higher cosmic order. Bandar, the bandit god, trickster spirit of thieves and beggars borrowed from the Khajiit. Additional deities with significant Bosmeri cults, Herma Mora, the woodland man, malicious trickster spirit, another one, whose Bosmeri cultists say is not to be confused with the Dedra Hermias Mora. Others deride this assertion. Joan and Jode, Little Moon God and Big Moon God, Aldmeri gods of the moons, they are spirits of fortune, both good and bad. Hircine, the huntsman, father of man-beasts, master of the great hunt and lord of all lycanthropes. Worshippers of Hircine are not as ruthless as those who worship other Dedra. They always give their prey at least a small chance to escape. Lorcan, the missing god, this creator-trickster-tester deity is in every Tamrielic mythic tradition. His most popular name is the Aldmeri, Lorcan, or Doomdrum. He convinced or contrived the original spirits to bring about the creation of the mortal plane, upsetting the status quo, much like his father Padome had introduced instability into the universe in the beginning place. After the world is materialized, Lorcan is separated from his divine center, sometimes involuntarily, and wanders the creation of the Ayada. He and his metaphysical placement in the scheme of things is interpreted a variety of ways. To the elves, he is the most unholy of all higher powers, as he forever broke their connection to the spirit plane. In the legends, he is almost always an enemy of the Aldmer and, therefore, a hero of early mankind. War customs of the tribal Bosma. By Mistral Aurelian Teriscor. While the wood elves of the towns are largely content with their drink and the luxuries provided by imperial trade, remote tribes in the depths of the jungle are far more savage. War is constantly waged under the eaves of Valenwood. When the tribes are not raiding the Khajiit in earnest, they are raiding one another for sport. Unlike civilized peoples, tribal Bosma do not fight for any meaningful or constructive purpose. They seem incapable of grasping the concept of fighting for control of land, resources, or defensible borders. Though they may swarm to push out those who harm Valenwood, they evince little interest in conquest for its own sake. Rather, the wood elves raid one another for booty, bragging, and boredom, in that order. Tribal raiders typically rustle timber mammoths and thunderbugs. Many steal items, or people, that can be ransomed back to the owners. This erratic, irregular warfare is not pursued to the death. Deaths do occur, but they are incidental and usually regretted. Many raids conclude with no fighting whatsoever. It is considered the acme of skill to slip into another tribe's village and steal an item for ransom without being noticed. The larger the item, the greater the prestige. Thanks to centuries of this practice, the tribal Bosma have become legendary for their stealth. The title of their most famous poem, the Mare Elidian, means, the 1,000 benefits of hiding. When death occurs in battle, an archaic provision of the meat mandate requires that a fallen enemy must be eaten completely before 3 days pass. This tradition is now only followed in the most remote and savage villages. The family members of the warrior who slaughtered the enemy may help him with his meal. The tradition of the morning war is still followed nearly everywhere outside the cities. When a tribe member is slain, he or she is symbolically replaced via a hostage-taking raid. The tribe will seize a captive from a neighboring band. If the deceased was an especially powerful or prestigious member of the tribe, multiple captives may be taken to replace them. After a period of physical torture, supposedly to test their worthiness, the captive is joyously welcomed into the clan. This sudden reversal from horrific abuse to loving embrace befuddles the weak wits of a Bosma captive, who cleaves to his tormentors. Traditionally, the victim was given the deceased tribe member's position, possessions, and family, though this practice may be rarely honored nowadays.